Okay, what's up, folks? Episode 8 of the Book Club podcast. We got Soroy and Andrew here. We're just waiting on Naz. Oh, he's fitting out. Fitting is right up right now. I'll you guys at the end. Okay, no, so Naz just. Yes. So I was actually early today. So these guys are spoken real quick, and basically, what I was saying was that boot camp that Naz and I are going me to get a little bit better with. So that's one bit of it. But yeah, this week we've got Andrew, Roy, and myself. We want to kind of go around the horn real quick, talk about what we're going to be sharing with the group, and whatever that cool idea first.
I can go ahead. This week I'll be discussing quantum computing and what I've been able to learn about it.
Very cool. Roy. Roy, you good?
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's
Okay.
cutting out a little bit.
That's okay.
My part will be on my new book, Built to Serve. I'll be talking about the 3 steps in finding your purpose, and just like a high-level overview of the 3 steps. I think I'll be going more into it as the book.
Very cool. Yeah, you did cut out at the end. You said as the book, I guess it progresses. It progresses. That's fine. Is that book by Ben Newman?
No, it's Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael.
Evan.
He's like a YouTuber, but he's actually based out of North York, which is pretty cool.
Oh, what? Locally here in Toronto?
Yeah. Like I didn't even notice, but like I watched one of his podcasts. I'm like, isn't that my salsa studio? And yeah, he's
No
actually like the
way.
owner of the salsa studio that I used to go to.
What?
So yeah, like small world. But he's like a pretty big YouTuber. I think he's like 2 million subscribers. He got like one of the things he does is like he takes like successful people and he like summarizes like 10 things they do.
Oh, that's cool. I think
But yeah,
who's the guy that wrote is it Tim Ferriss 4 Hour Work Week?
yes, yeah, Tim
He had
Ferriss.
that other book that's super thick, Tribe of Mentors, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And yeah, it's a really good one where he asks the same set of questions to a bunch of different people that are successful. So I thought that was cool. Very cool. Actually, you know what? I might even add that into my next moving forward. I'll just add a section about it. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the boot camp that I'm going through right now. Then I'm going to talk about the second circle. We already went through the first circle and third circle theory. I'll do a quick little recap of what that was. Then I'll go into the second circle kind of as briefly as I can, just to give you a high level overview. Then I'm going to talk about a couple things that I learned in some podcasts, and actually kind of meshes well together with what I read this week as well. So, Andrew, do you want to take it away? Talk about quantum computing, which is effing cool. Like I've talked to the most like smart people I know, the smartest people I know in IT, and even they describe quantum computing as quote unquote magic, which I think is insane. We got Ruben here listening as well. Ruben, if you want to say hi real quick, I don't. You're muted, but you want to just say hi? No, okay. I go in the background. But Andrew, yeah, take it away. Go ahead.
Sounds good. So there's so much information about quantum computing. I'd recommend that everyone do a bit of research themselves, watch a couple YouTube videos, but I'm just gonna express what I can based on my limited knowledge. So quantum computing is use of quantum phenomena such as superposition and entanglement to perform computation. Sounds very complicated, I know, but we'll try to break it down bit by bit. Okay, so computers that perform quantum computations are known as quantum computers, and they use quantum physics. One quote that's like been said a lot in the industry is, "If you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics at all." So that's relevant to what I'm going to be saying because a lot of it, we people won't be able to take in, but they're just going to have to do their own research and try and take it in slowly, bit by bit, to fully understand what goes on with quantum computing. So it began early in the 1980s, even though it's the future of computing. It started since then, and like I guess the reason that we all want to know is why is it so important? So it will be able to hopefully solve different problems and create different ways of doing things for the future. But the biggest threat right now is security. Right now, all of our computing and messaging, banking, basically all of our encrypted information is done on the platform of RSA encryption. It's a public key crypto system. It was started to be discussed in 1977, and right now it's widely used for secure data transmission. Um, it's one of the oldest ways of encrypting data. That's the way that we do all of our encryption now. And when quantum computers are up and running, then it should have enough processing power to break RSA encryption, meaning that all of the protection that we have now will be invalid by computer hackers or governments that have access to quantum computing in the future. Um, in 1994, Peter Shor published an algorithm capable of efficiently solving problems in cryptography that are hard to solve for classical computers. That is the vast majority of computers used today. In fact, Shor's algorithms continue to threaten fundamentals of the most encryptions deployed across the globe. So, quantum computers are believed to be able to solve computational problems such as integer factorization, which underlies RSA encryption. Um, they can do this substantially faster than classical computers. So basically, the belief is when quantum computers is in the hands of an online criminal, they can steal our encrypted info based on the RSA platform. And when it's in the hands of certain governments, they can read our encrypted information without our permission. Um, the encryption industry is looking to work on the solution now, as they know that when quantum computing moves closer, um, they'll be able to break this password. So they're trying to work on it now. Um, so in 1994, when people started talking about different types of quantum computing, like there was no quantum computer built. Um, the first tiny quantum computer was built, and the field really took off when the Canadian company D-Wave, which is out of BC, revealed its 28 qubit quantum computer in 2007. They've since then um, they have a D-Wave now has 1,097 qubit quantum computer, and I think their cloud computer has around 5,000 qubits of processing power. We'll get more into qubits in a moment. What other companies have been working on quantum computing? Google and NASA have just Google and NASA announced that they achieved quantum supremacy. That's the ability of quantum computers to perform certain tasks that a classical computer simply cannot do in a reasonable time frame. The quantum computer solved the problem in 200 seconds. That would take the world's fastest supercomputer 10,000 years. So, like, based on performance of this particular task, the quantum computer is way better. Other companies that have the technology, IBM, I'm going to say this name wrong. The company is spelled RIGETTI, Rigetti. Google and IconQ all provide public access with open source tools to real quantum computing hardware. IBM even sells a quantum computer called the Q System 1, and D-Wave as well has their own app store for their cloud quantum computer called Leap 2, where user developed early quantum applications on D-Wave systems, including airline scheduling, election modeling, quantum chemistry simulation, automotive design, preventative healthcare, logistics, and much more can be solved on these types of computers. But for now, quantum computing isn't powerful enough to beat the RSA code. It'll probably take another 10 to 20 years. So what is quantum computing? There are several models of quantum computers. The most widely used model is the quantum circuit. In classical computers, we use bits, which can be in one of two positions. It can either be a 0 or a 1. Quantum circuits are, in comparison, which are called which create quantum bits, otherwise known as qubits. Um, they can be in the state of 1 or 0 or both, also known as a superposition. However, when qubits are measured, the results of the measurements is always either a 0 or 1. The probability of these two outcomes depend on the quantum state that the qubits were in immediately prior to the measurement. So how can a qubit be in a 1, 0, or both? That's a really technical thing that I would recommend people do more research on, because it's hard for me to explain with my limited knowledge. Talking about another keyword that they had used was quantum superposition. This is relating to being a one or a zero or both. It's a fundamental principle of quantum mechanics. It's a state which, like waves in a classical physics, any two or more quantum states can be added together, superposed, and the result will be another valid quantum state. And conversely, that every quantum state can be represented as a sum of two or more other distinctive states. Um, the power of a computer comes with so we're just talking about one qubit being a zero or a one or both. We're getting bogged down into what a qubit is, but the power of computing comes from using many bits, which allows the storage of diverse kinds of information once someone figures out how to encode the data, such as things like text, numbers, images, and sounds. It also allows for more sophisticated manipulations of the data, since changes in one set of bit can depend on the state of other bits. So basically, each qubit or like or quantum computers are going to need very special programming in order to get the answers for the questions that we're going to be asking them. So how can we solve for problems with quantum computers if a qubit can be zero, one, or both? Like, how do you get like a final answer that's the right answer, given that there's so many different states of these qubits? So once you have your computational problem encoded in qubits, there's an operation you can do with qubits that has no counterpart in classical bit computing, called interference. This operation takes a set of qubits representing possible solutions to a problem with proper encoding, causes the possibilities corresponding to wrong answers to cancel out, resulting in a near zero amplitude, leaving only the right answers to be detected. To put it in another way, a properly set up quantum computation causes wrong answers to be destructively interfered, and correct answers to be constructively interfere. The result is still problematic, as it's still possible to get a wrong answer, but a careful designed quantum computer can have 99.99% chance of returning the right answer. So basically, if you run the problem a couple times and you keep getting the same answer, then you can be fairly sure that you're getting the right answer. So quantum computers don't get their speed from trying every possibility in parallel. It still takes processing to encode the problem and solution space into the qubits and perform the necessary transformations. In fact, based on our current knowledge of quantum computers, there are only a handful of problems that quantum computers can solve faster than classical computers. The most famous one being Shor's algorithm for factoring numbers. And each problem requires a unique setup. So every time you're trying to solve for a new problem on the quantum computer, you have to have special encoding to do so. As far as we know, there are no universal quantum computers that can solve all problems faster than a normal computer. So to handle the qubits, we need special encoding to ensure wrong answers are destroyed and correct answers are constructed. So like, what quantum computing do we have available now? There are a lot of hybrid quantum computing systems available. D-Wave, the Canadian company I mentioned earlier, it announced that customers can now access the system through a hybrid solver, a system that breaks a computing task into components. Some of the components are solved by using a quantum computer, and some of the components are solved using traditional computers. Um, this makes the D-Wave system competitive with IBM and Google, as they also offer hybrid quantum classical systems through the cloud. So basically, they're using both classical computers and quantum computers to solve problems by breaking them down and using the appropriate computer system for the appropriate part of the problem. So this has been like a whole lot of theory. So like, let's look at some practical examples now of where quantum computing has actually been used in real life. So Volkswagen has done a lot of work with D-Wave. So Volkswagen used D-Wave's new hybrid quantum solver to find the best way to swap the colors assigned to cars passing through the paint shop in one of its factories, though it could reduce the number of times it would need to change the paint spray nozzles in order to paint the car a different color. To minimize the nozzle and hardware changes would save money in the end. Volkswagen has also used D-Wave systems previously to find the best way to route taxis through a crowded city, based on real-time traffic conditions, with results that are far better than have been previously used. Volkswagen is currently preparing to offer this route optimization as a paid service to logistics companies, as well as cities hoping to implement smarter ways to route buses and other transport. Volkswagen has also experimented with using quantum computers for other problems too, including looking at how best to alter the design of a wing mirror on one of its cars to minimize the amount of noise the mirror would make at highway speeds. It also has begun looking into quantum computers to help design more efficient batteries for electric cars. Another way that quantum computing is being used in a practical way is a company called in San Francisco called Mentin AI. It uses machine learning algorithm and complex physics simulators to try to figure out sequences of peptides, the small chains of amino acids and proteins, larger amino acids that will yield better pharmaceuticals. So I guess in summary, I would say that the technical aspect of how quantum computers are used is through the qubit, and I would suggest everyone to do a bit more research into that. And we need to know that the quantum computers will be very powerful, but it's not necessary that our cell phone will be a quantum computer. Maybe a traditional computer will still be the best way for us to do our day-to-day tasks. It seems like quantum computers will be very specialized to solve very abstract problems, and it's gonna there's gonna be a lot of answers that are coming from the quantum computer, and we have to make sure that we get correct answers and is able to destroy the wrong answers. So in the future, it looks like classical computers will still be a fundamental part of computing, and quantum computing will be like very high level for solving for different things that we haven't solved for yet. And that's what I had.
So basically, if hackers get their hands on this, we're fucked.
Yes, not yet, but like when.
No,
So
wow.
this, yeah, so that's why everyone's like in a scramble now to do the next system or to secure this system better.
So while everyone's worrying about COVID and stuck at home, there are probably a subset of people out there being like, "This is the world is slower, so I can take advantage of." I'm, by the way, but
Yeah,
it's
it's going to be
probably
like any technology. You can use it for good or bad, right?
correct. Correct. Yeah, Gary Vee always says that internet or technology change exposed VR. Right?
Mm.
Very cool. Thanks for that. What made you want to learn about quantum computing specifically? Because, I mean, this is the first time that, in my dealings with you, I've known you for what, almost 20 or 10, 12 years now. This is the first time it's come up. So, yeah, what sparked the interest in it?
So one thing I've been doing more recently, since I'm having to drive a lot, is I listen to TED Talks about technology on my way up and down from downtown.
Mm.
And one of them was talking about the security issues of the RSA system and how it's going to be beat with quantum computing. So then I'm like, well, what is this quantum computing that's going to break the foundation of our security systems across the world? And then listened to a few videos and I was just like, what? What does this even mean? Like, what? Like, all this seems so abstract. Like, how can I even process this information? And then that just wanted me to like learn about it more, and like the understanding I had about it not today versus like a week ago was very different because like it's like when you read a book sometimes you pick up different pieces of information that you didn't pick up last time. So that's how it's been for me. Every time I watch a video or read something about it, I'm just starting to understand like 0.0000001% more each day. So yeah, that's what's my motivation is for that.
Wow, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else got any questions before we move on to Soroy? I think Naz is here as well. So, what's going on, Naz? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I do think that blockchain will help with the hacking part in the future. Because when you hack, you do hack one centralized location, but blockchain is literally the opposite of that.
Oh, so it could be a. But then the other thing that quantum computing can do is it can process the options for the blockchain a lot quicker than traditional,
That's another
right?
thing too. Right.
So that was one thing I heard about in my conversations that if quantum computing comes out in a mass scale, then
Exactly.
blockchain as we know it and all the currency fucked because it's just like the way that you can mine using quantum. way faster than
Hmm.
currently.
Yeah, one of the ways to attack blockchain is by um, attacking all of the nodes, which is like the computers, and you can do that with like quantum computing too. Or you can just have a shitload of quantum computers and mine all the coins for yourself and then manipulate it too, which I can see countries doing.
Wow, very cool. Naz, do you want to give a brief intro into what you're going to be talking about? Then we'll hand it
Sure.
to Roy, and then go after me.
Yeah, so sorry I'm late. I was just gonna talk about money laundering, how it's different now, and probably the main reasons you do it now, and probably the best location you want to do it from and towards, and what you do with the money after, I guess.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So Roy, you want to start with your part? Then we'll go on to me, and then go on to Naz.
Yep, can do. Let me know if my headset's okay.
Sounds
Some
okay to
issues with it.
me. Anyone
Cool.
else? Sound okay?
Sounds perfect, yeah.
Sounds great.
Sweet.
Cool. Go for it.
I know it's just low battery, so if it dies out and I just drop out, that's probably why.
Okay. If
Um,
it dies out though, you won't be able to hear us. So how do we notify?
it should go on speaker. Like it'll just go to
Oh, okay,
speaker,
okay. Cool.
or something. But it'll take me a couple seconds to fix that.
That's fine. That's nothing. Go for it.
Okay, cool. So the book that I'm reading is called Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael. It starts off with like finding your purpose. He talks about how if you don't feel like driven or don't have the energy to do something, it's because you haven't found your purpose yet, because your purpose will give you that energy. So he says, how do you get to your purpose? Like, how do you identify it? Like that's kind of the challenging part. It's like the thing that everyone wishes they could figure out. So he kind of breaks it down into like three steps. So it's the who, the why, and the how. So then it starts off with the who. So the who is what is your most important core value? So the who is who you are. So the question that he asked is he asked a couple probing questions. It goes, who was your favorite teacher growing up? Who or what is your favorite movie of all time? And what is your favorite song? So the idea is you want to find out who you are, and this is obviously the hardest part, and what people kind of strive to figure out over the course of their life. So you have to ask these questions. So when I asked myself these three questions, I didn't really get an answer right off the bat. Um, so then I just Googled like core values, see if I went through a list, if anything would kind of stand out. So I ended up, when I Googled it, James Clear's website popped up. He's the author of Atomic Habits. And he had a list of like 50 core values. And then I just copy and pasted that list into an Excel file. And then I quickly like rank them like 1 to 3. I might re-rank them 1 to 5 to give them a little bit more accuracy. And then I was trying to see like which one stood out. And I ended up with like 11 core values that I ranked as like top tier. Um, and I think it'll be like a process of kind of figure out what the number one core value is. It says, so the key about finding your number one core value is that once you figure it out, you can now easily see if things in your life align. So in the example, when he asked those three questions, it was the favorite teacher was like some eighth grade teacher, a math teacher, but it wasn't the fact that she taught you math that made you her favorite. It was the fact that you liked that she made you feel like you belonged. And then the movie was Hercules. Um, and it was like the premise is he's half god, half human, so he never feels like he belongs to either. And then like the favorite song was some Michael Bolton song, and there was a line about like belonging. So when like in the example with those three questions is like clearly the belonging is the key core value that stands out. So now that like if that was you and you kind of realize that belonging is your core value, now you can look at your like business or job or relationship and see if it aligns. Because even if you're making a lot of money, but at your business or like your work, you don't feel like you belong, then it'll still be a toxic environment for you. And I thought that was very important because some environments might help others thrive where some environments won't. So it's very individual. And then once you figure out your who, like who you are, what's your core value, the next step is why. So there was a quote that I liked, and it was there are two great days in a person's life: the day we are born and the day we discover why, by William Barclay. So the probing question is, what was the most painful moment in your life? Because your purpose comes from your pain. So, for example, in the same situation with this like imaginary person, if you moved to America and was bullied for your accent and you never felt like you belonged, that would kind of give you like an example. And like clearly, like belong keeps popping up in this situation. So it's a very clear thing. So he mentions that your why and your who don't change over the course of your life. Um, in fact, they might even get stronger as you build more confidence around it. And then the step three is how. So, how did you get through your pain? So, in the example, it says like he used meditation. So meditation kind of helped get him like helped get through his pain. So now that you have your three, is like so if your how is the meditation that got you out of the pain, you can now use that as like a as your passion. So it says your how is your passion, and it is what you will love to do every day to help others. So in this case, it's meditation. So maybe you want to sell meditation videos. Maybe you want to open a meditation center or teach meditation at school or do like meditation retreats. It mentions that your how will evolve. So maybe in 2020 you sell meditation retreats, but maybe in 2030 you're doing virtual reality meditation. So your who and your why are constant, but your how evolves as technology, the market, and you evolve. So I thought that was very interesting and kind of like the intro for this book. It looks like the next couple chapters go more deep into the three different steps, like the who, the why, and the how. So I'll probably be talking about that moving forward. And then I also listened to, or I read an article on the Daily Stoic, and I was just gonna summarize it because I really liked it. Um, so this takes from Stoic philosophy. So it says the Stoic does not have time to criticize others because they have too much to improve at home. So it says, look inward, not outward. Don't complain. Don't meddle in the affairs of others. And remember when you have acted like that when you see someone acting objectively. Like let's say that you see somebody like doing something that you disagree with, instead of like judging them or um like kind of coming from an ego, be like showing them like, oh, I would never do that, I'm better. Just try to remember a time in your past where you acted the same way. So if you see someone acting childish, you can look back in a time where you acted somewhere similar, and that kind of helps you be more empathetic towards them. And then the last thing it talks about is when we make the distinction between what's in our control and what's outside our control, we very quickly see that it is only our own decisions and actions and words and thoughts that are worth our attention. Everything else is the business of everyone. And that's kind of what I had for this week.
Man, I love that really stoic quote. I think that's huge. And there's a lot of parallels between what we're all kind of talking. I keep saying this, but it's like it keeps proving itself to be true. So you guys see that when I get into my section. For the Daily Stoic article, where did you read that, Spray?
So there's a couple places. I listened to his podcast. He has like a daily Stoic podcast that I just recently found last week.
Yeah,
But before that, I was just like I follow his Instagram profile,
called the Daily
and
Stoic.
yeah, it's called the Daily Stoic. And like on his story, he'll like put out like 3 to 4 stories about something like this. Um, and then the podcast, most days it's like 5 or 6 minutes, like a short thing like similar to this, but then like once a week he does like a longer like 1 hour podcast. Yeah, so I follow the Daily Stoic, some other Stoic pages, and then I read the book. Like so Ryan Holiday is the like creator of the Daily Stoic.
Hmm?
So I also read his book Ego's the Enemy that I talked about in the last couple weeks. So yeah.
He actually has a book called the Daily Stoic, and that's where I've as
uh
well. Yeah, it's like 300
yep.
meditations, stuff like that. So that's super interesting. I
Hmm.
still haven't finished that book. We'll just read a couple pages a day, and I like that he can do it in audio format as well. The
Hmm.
podcast. Very cool. Thanks for exposing us to that. Any questions for Sroy from anyone before we move on? Good. Um, so okay, for my section, I kind of Naz, are you there?
Yep.
Yo, you want to real quick talk about the boot camp that we're going through together? You know how we have that and stuff like that. Um, what have
What
you found? It's been over a week now. We started last Friday. What sort of things have you found about it? About yourself, about going through it, any habits that you felt, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So, in the first circle, which I believe that I am in, it talks about what is it, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight different attributes that people that are stuck in this first circle uh haven't mastered. Um, so the eight are real quick, just confidence, fear, choice, belief, environment, time, entourage, and goals. And those are the eight things you want to master. I feel like personally, probably most of them I haven't mastered. I'm really bad at time, environment, goals, and I think for me the biggest thing is fear. PJ talks a lot about the fear of rejection and the fear of failure, and that's why a lot of people don't take action. For me, that's the number one problem. Even though on the flip side, more uh, ironically, I feel like I have the confidence side. Whatever I'm doing, if I put my time into it, um, I can do it confidently. But uh, for me to do anything or take the first step, fear plays a huge role in that. And so for me personally, I found that that's why I don't try a lot of things or like take a lot of things very seriously. It's because I'm afraid of failure and rejection at the same time. Um, One way that like taking action has helped me is by being consistent that he talks about. One of the best ways you can become confident is he says is through experience is by doing and also being consistent, which is very true. I used to be a huge runner back in the day when I was a kid. I haven't really been into a lot of cardio workouts for the last like decade. I just started running this year. Um, and when I used to play any type of sports in the last couple of years, I could not keep I couldn't keep up maybe 3 minutes into it. And I always thought that, it's just part of being old. This is my new life, whatever. Uh, it, it was static, whatever. But through running for the last like whatever couple of months, I've achieved like a certain level of running for a certain amount of time, 10 minutes at this point. But um, it's just that your body's a lot like a plant. As long as you're being consistent with it and you're nurturing it, um, it's gonna grow to whatever you ask of it. The way I used to think is you can wake up one day and whatever your obstacles are, whatever you need to do is you can flip like a switch and you're gonna be able to do whatever you need to do. But that's not how the human body works. That's not how the human mind works. You need to be in a consistent environment or just state so that you can achieve the obstacles or overcome the obstacles and the goals that you need to. Um, so like I said, I'm working on the fear part. The entourage parts actually got better. Um, the time management I'm really bad with that PG talks about. I haven't even. I need to work on that. That's pretty much where I'm at right now, Dave.
That's very cool. Yeah, wow. You did like I was gonna go into a description of the first circle, what we learned about. You kind of just for me, so thank you for that. For me, it's it gives me a bit of direction. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm the kind of person where I'll hustle if I'm given a bit of a direction. But in order to really master yourself and evolve, you need to be able to break free from the direction that's you externally and give yourself direction. And so this is it's kind of like a mediator, right? Because we don't necessarily have to do this, but we understand why. And so I've every single day that we had to do the exercise I've done right when I wake up, with the exception of Friday. And it kind of goes down to something that I'll talk about, which is like really like when we started this boot camp, I was like, okay, I'm only gonna start this if I intend on finishing it to the best of my ability. And otherwise, what's the point of doing it at all, right? Um, doing it with someone else gives me a certain level of accountability as well. Because I feel like, sure, I don't want to let myself down, but I also don't want to let anyone down. And
Can I
so,
speak on that real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
So that's one of the, the parts about the entourage. It's kind of cliche because a lot of people speak about this too. Is like, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you your future, whatever. Um, but that part is very true because I told Dave the first week I probably wouldn't have finished some of the workouts because uh, just him holding me accountable. A lot of other people that I know, and it's not any detriment to them. It's just that you know that's how we are in our relationship. There's no way we would have held each other accountable to try and do. I did 70, I think that the second day, and I told Dave, I'm like, man, that was a killer workout, and I thought I was done because I did 70. It was the most I could do. I was supposed to do 100. And Dave literally kicked my ass. He's like, "No, you gotta go back and finish it." And I went back and I did 30 more push-ups, which is actually pretty easy because I had a long break. But uh, it's true with your entourage. You want to have people close that are like-minded with you. Uh, even with the card thing with Curry, and then with like Soroy with this book club stuff. Like to me, it's very beneficial. It's because you guys provide the opportunity and like the time, uh, that for me to like be a part of. And again, it just benefits me. So like, I just want to add that for the entourage part. There's so much you can go into detail for each of the ones, but because you brought up the entourage part, I wanted to say that.
Yeah, yeah. No, 100%. Stop me at any point. Like these weekly, book club meetings are a very good way for us to be able to reflect on the important things that we've learned this week to make sure that we're one holding each other accountable and showing up, but also like, hey, like, what did I actually learn this week? You know what I mean? And if I don't have something to present, holy shit, like, why didn't I learn something this week? Hey, well, let me figure something out. Let me learn something to present it to you guys. So yeah, like the first circle is really about mastering your circumstances. And I know that sometimes people are born into really shit circumstances, but like it's really not as bad as to be. And here's the thing: everyone's gonna hear that. A lot of people are gonna be kind of, and this first circle is really important because, he even prefaces it in the book. Like it's kind of like putting a mirror in front of yourself. And a lot of you are gonna be very uncomfortable, maybe even offended by some of the stuff that is gonna be discussed here, and that's okay. Like mastering your emotions is part of moving past the first circle. And so when I say, hey, your circumstances are not as bad as they are, it doesn't actually matter how bad they are. It's true. There's a video in part of the boot camp of this dude. I can't remember his name. I gotta find out. But he literally has one arm and no leg. And he runs a successful company and he's like accumulated success and wealth and a following. And he wrestled. Like, think about that. A guy with one arm and no legs wrestle. And the reason he says he's like, my parents always like, instilled that I need to figure it out, and the world's not gonna slow down for me just because I was born with this birth defect. He actually was born with two arms, but one of them was kind of smaller than the other, and the bone was growing faster than the skin, so it really hurt. And so in high school, he's like, "Hey, I want to learn how to wrestle." And they're like, "What? Like, are you serious right now?" And he goes, "Yo, you told me from a young age, give me a fork and food and say, Nick, figure it out. And then, you give me the stairs, Nick, figure it out. Or, chair, hey, figure it out." I think his name's Nick. I gotta find out. Um, I'll find out before the end of the podcast. But you just got to figure it out, right? And so he's like, I want to figure this out. And so they went to the doctor, and they're like, hey, man, like your arm is gonna prevent you from wrestling, because there's gonna be a lot of people growing faster than the skin. And so he's like, all right, amputate my arm. And they're like, what? Like you already have no legs, and you only have one and a half arms. Are you sure? And he goes, yep, amputate that other half. And then he started wrestling. You know what I mean? And great, like he didn't really win the first year. They gave him a varsity jacket, kind of out of pity. He didn't accept it. And then he's like, I'm gonna go back at it. And then so just to finish that off, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. But he just kept wrestling, and like eventually he won a couple of fights, and he's like, okay, great. And then people would come up to him, like they would gather to watch it first off. They're like, what the hell? This is a crazy spectacle. but they would come up to him after the fights and they're like, "Yo, because of what you did and what you just stood like, figuratively stood up to do, um, my kid wants to go and wrestle." And they would have never wanted to even take the chance because of how afraid they were. But after seeing you like come across your fears and overcome it, just doing this, they want to do it. So he's like, "Oh crap!" And so he starts using that to kind of accumulate a following. So that was cool. But yeah, mastering your circumstances is a huge thing, right? And like every day I've been running outside, again, all days except for one, in the cold, in the mud, whatever it is, making it happen. And it's a figurative sorry, it's a metaphor for business and just life in general, right? Like it's really easy to do stuff when it's convenient, when it's warm outside, when the everything lines up. But it's not easy to do it when things aren't going as planned. And that's how business do, right? You need to find a way to adapt. A lot of times you just got to suck it up and get through it. Another interview was with Fabio Viviani, I think his last name is, and his mom worked 3 jobs. His dad worked a couple of jobs. They were poor, like they would, if they were lucky, they'd have 2 meals a day. His family, right? So he was just like, man, like my family's working so hard, and like I need to make sure that I'm not in this situation. So he ends up running one of the biggest restaurants. I think it's in Florida in the U.S. And he's extremely successful now. He's got a bunch of interviews. Fabio Viviani is his name. And so he's like another guy who's like, don't be a master of or don't let your circumstance dictate your ability to thrive and succeed. So yeah, to get back to it, I think the boot camp's been great. We're only on day 10 right now. It's a mixture of exercise, which is in the first week 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, 10 burpees, and running a mile. And you got to do the sets of 100 in one sitting. So whether it be 10 sets of 10 or, I was doing 50, 30, 20, so 3 sets for the push-ups, sit-ups, a little bit more sets. You can't do 20 in the morning, 30 later on, a few hours later, and then before you go to bed, do the rest. That's not how it works. But yeah, I think it's been great. There's reading as well. I like finished a book in a week, which I've never, or in a few days, which I've never done before in my life. Crazy. And some videos and stuff like that. But I'm gonna get into like the second circle. So again, like Naz said, first circle is about mastering your circumstances, learning to control your emotions, and not letting fear prevent you from taking action.
It's
Excuse me.
also the story you tell yourself too.
It's about the narrative that you tell yourself, right?
Right.
Which is huge. Yeah, like and that's perspective, which is part of the second circle as well. But the whole premise of the book is that like, you know, well, not the premise of the book, but the premise of the first circle anyway, is that choice plus action equals outcome. So you got to look at the choices you make as a neutral thing. Like it's really easy just to be like, "Oh, I made a shit choice," and own it. But it's like that's like you can just say that without it actually holding any merit and it actually helping your ability to overcome your circumstance, right? Because again, by doing that, I'm becoming a victim of the choice. Like I've made the choice. Now, if I make a choice and assume that that choice is neutral, whether it's good or bad, whatever, a detriment to my success, whatever it is, now I need to take action to influence my outcome. So whatever choice I made, I now have to take action to get closer to the outcome that I want. And that is the thinking that you want to start going towards or moving. So I'm gonna get into it now. So for the second circle, so okay, so PJ talks about self-employment, and I talked about this a little last week, but this week there was an actual comment about it. And I thought, okay, cool, this is a cool way to start it. So self-employment is about risk tolerance, not entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is about envisioning something that doesn't exist and having the ability and mindset to bring it to life. And so innovation is the driver of entrepreneurship. It's about giving birth to something. He goes and again, this part's about like it's more in the latter part of the book. But so I'm gonna take a few steps forward, then go back into the second circle. But I just thought this was a cool way to start it off. He gives a really cool quote by Michelangelo. And he says that the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and that we miss it, but that it's too low and that we reach it. So again, greatest danger for most of us is that our aim is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that our aim is too low and we reach it. So we end up settling for less than we're capable of because we don't believe in ourselves to go further. And again, Andy Frisella talks about this, right? If he's like, okay, let's do it in a very superficial way, okay? If you say you want to be a millionaire, you'll probably be a bit better off than the person that wants to make $100,000. You know what I mean? Now, if you want to be a billionaire, you're going to be better off than the person who wants to be a millionaire, right? Now, again, the book talks about not making money your financial goals. This is just a very surface level way to look at it. And again, you just wishing it is only going to get you so far. You have to put in action towards that. So the person who genuinely wants to and believes that they can become a billionaire and puts in the effort consistently towards making that happen is going to be far better off than the person who genuinely believes that they're going to make $100,000 a year and puts in action towards that consistently. Does that make sense? Because the action that you need towards becoming a billionaire is a lot more than becoming someone who makes $100,000 a year. And similarly, if it's like, I want to be the best chef in all of the United States versus I want to be the best chef in my town, those are two different ways to look at it. Now, again, you can kind of argue that just start with becoming the best chef in town and then end up going to becoming the best chef in the States or North America. That's another way to look at it too, right? But ultimately, your goal was, I want to be the best chef in America, but I'm starting by being the best chef in my town. Another cool thing that he talks about is legacy. He says that legacy, like a lot of people think of legacy as, okay, when I'm going to have children and they're going to pass on my legacy. But he says that it doesn't have to originate from having children, nor does it have to do anything with religious beliefs or practices. So he says that children are not going to always carry your name in the way that you want to be remembered, and it's unfair to expect them to win when you failed by giving up. So he wraps it up by saying that children actually have no relevance to your legacy. They're going to create their own, which is going to differ from yours, and it's going to be nothing to your future. And then another good quote that he mentioned was like, what you have or don't have doesn't dictate whether you're remembered or not. What you have or don't have is not a measure of your success or a measure of your intelligence or mindset. It's nothing more than your success rate at mastering the game of society, not the game of life. So the first circle is mastering your circumstances. The second circle is mastering society, right? So then now I'm going to get into the second circle. See how it flows really cool? So the first pie of the second circle is education. And he breaks it down into three different types of education. Formal education is the one that we all know, the school system and whatnot. It is the one that usually we're all exposed to first out of all the three forms that he identifies. It essentially teaches us how to live and how to survive within our society. Second is, self-education. This teaches you how the system works, but you don't accept the system that you're shown. You know what I mean? So you're looking for other ways to master the system, right? And examples of this could be finding out ways to minimize your tax bracket and that kind of stuff, right? I can't think of another one. Or creating your own business versus working for another employer. Selective education is the understanding of concepts rather than things, and it identifies the connectors of life. So the example he gives is, and again, this is kind of tweaks your perception as well, and it's how the automotive industry is connected to the IT industry, or how Ford is connected to Microsoft. And so if you have an IT background, which I know me and Soroy do, and I'm sure that you guys, Naz and Soroy, you guys have a little bit of an idea just talking to us and stuff. You know that like there is a connection between those two industries because you're going to need technology to build the cars, and there's technology in the cars, but also the back-end processes requires technology. And Microsoft probably has a footprint within Ford for all the back-end employees to use Microsoft Office, store things in the cloud, have a customer relationship management tool, right? And that kind of stuff, right? So again, selective education is the understanding of concepts rather than just things. The next piece of the second circle is money. And so when you start mastering the second circle, there's a stage at which you become very money driven and see success, right? And you have to understand the value of time and money, which makes you kind of a danger to those around you and showcases a level of confidence that's unrivaled. But at that stage, money is the most important aspect of your life. Um, and again, just because you graduate from one circle to the next doesn't mean that you don't regress. It's a fluid thing. It's kind of like a spiral where you go back and forth thing. Um, the next thing is habits. Two habits that he says, and again, talked about this earlier today with the other guys. Being proactive. So this thing is huge. And as I'm going through this boot camp, this is one of the things I'm realizing is that you get two voices in your head. You have to make a decision. Okay. The first voice is the voice in your mind that tells you what you should do. Then the second one is the voice in your mind that tells you what you want to do. Right. And a very applicable one would be I'm online streaming or playing Dota and it's 10:30 and I'm like, "Hey, I can squeeze in one more game." What I should do is go to sleep right now, right? So that I can get a head start to my day, I can get the rest that I need so that I can run it consistently for 90 days and all that stuff. What I want to do is play one more game, right? And yeah, you need to listen to that proactive mind because that voice that's telling you what you should do is most often the one that's going to help you out long term. But it's very hard to siphon out that voice that tells you what you want to do because that one is the one that wants instant gratification, right? Then you start justifying, oh, it's only one game. It could be 40 minutes. Like, it's cool. You'll still get 7.5 hours. Ignore that voice, okay? Second habit is being consistent. Consistency and hard work are what lead to positive outcomes. Once you develop that, you start realizing that money isn't everything, victory is. And as a result, you actually become self motivated. So you actually don't need external variables to kind of push you to drive you to go forward. Next is emotion. So learning to keep your feelings from paralyzing your actions enables you to make better decisions instead of dwelling on what doesn't work. This is huge because I think because we're emotional creatures, everyone, you know, like it's really easy to be dictated by your emotions on how you react to certain things. But you need to become more logical. And this doesn't mean to bottle the emotions, like you can feel them, but you need to be able to control them and make sure that you're not making decisions based on emotion, right? And again, like love is a different thing. Like obviously you're going to need to feel your emotions, but you should also be logical because oftentimes I'm sure that all of you have been in this where you're with a person, you're head over heels for them, but something in you tells you that this isn't going to work out or they're not the right one for me. But because you're driven by your emotions, you stick it through. Now, again, there isn't a cookie cutter build to this. Sometimes that's what actually helps you stay in relationships long term, right? But I just think that most often than not, exceptions being relationships, being logical is going to help long term. And it's going to help you with stress management, stuff like that too. What you want to do is you want to remove yourself from the equation at hand. So I'm sure you guys have all been this, viewers, guys in the call. You'll see a friend who's in a toxic relationship, and I can use a relationship in this case because it suits very well. For example. You'll see a friend in a toxic relationship. They come to ask you for advice. You realize that the friend is blinded by their judgment. You're not emotionally affected, but you can see that your friend is. They're not listening to you. Now, what you want to do using that example is you want to be the person who's the third party looking in from the outside for anything that happens to you that's going to dictate an emotional reaction. So, whether it takes 20 seconds, whether it's, go out for a walk or whatever, remove yourself from the situation at hand and kind of picture yourself as if someone else, like my friend, was going through this same situation, what advice would I give them? And that's the advice that you kind of want to follow because it's an emotional removed from the equation. Um, Another really cool quote from Ben Newman, that's why Roy asked you about that, is our circumstances in life are much less significant than our response to them. Yeah, say that again real quick. Our circumstances in life are much less significant than our response. I think that's self-explanatory, and I think that you live by that, you're going to get a weapon, A few other things just to close it off. Leadership. So the next stage is leadership in the second circle. And what you do in that stage is you want to help other people get past the first circle and make sure that they're not being victims of their circumstance. As a result of the success, you start to grow and gather a following. Some people use this to manipulate other people. Others use it to help people. it's really crucial that you identify where people's intentions are when they're trying to help you, whether they're trying to take advantage of you for self gain or whether they're genuinely trying to help you. One thing that I learned this week in the boot camp is that every relationship is a give or take. You know what I mean? And you want to make sure that it's not going to be equal. There's no way that any relationship is going to be equal in terms of the give or take, but you need to find a balance. And if you identify that a balance, whether it be with a friend, a significant other, a family member, a mentor, if you're giving more than you're if you're taking more than you're giving, then you're less valuable in that relationship. So you need to identify what you can do to give more to that person, right? And vice versa. If you're giving more than you're receiving, well then you need to identify, is this person valuable enough to keep as close as they are, or should I distance myself a little bit? I know that sounds a little cutthroat, but dude, as you guys grow up, you're going to notice that you're not going to have as much time. You need to prioritize yourself more. Otherwise, you're not going to be in a happy place. If you're not in a happy place, you're screwed and you're not going to be able to help anyone. Great leaders must know how to identify individuals with similar values and belief. Without this, influence cannot occur because influence is a byproduct of. So you need to identify others who believe what you believe and understand why you believe that stuff in order to maximize a group's or following's true potential. And again, we talked about this earlier too. Becoming a great leader when everything is great is easy, but being a great leader when all else fails takes all the mastered components of the first circle in order for you to emerge victorious. There's two components there, right? Again, it's easy to do well when things are easy. It's not as easy to do well when things are hard. And for leadership, it's easy to be a good leader when things are easy. It's tough to be a good leader when things are hard. And again, you have to master all the components of the first circle in order for you to emerge victorious. So now again, we're talking about victory instead of chasing money. There's a leadership podcast by Andy Frisella that I listened to, and there's really one quote that kind of I took away from, and he said that like leadership is like sleeping. So a lot of people think that you need to earn certain stripes in order to become a leader, but actually he says that you have to kind of fake it till you make it a little bit, and he compares it to sleeping. So you guys notice that when you're going to sleep, you have to pretend that you're sleeping before you actually fall asleep. And that's exactly what leadership is, according to him. Obviously, there's different components to it, but that's what it is. So everyone has the capability of being a leader, but not everyone has the capability of being good. And that takes humility, patience, consistency, continuous evolution in education, and that kind of stuff, right? He also says that sales and leadership are two crucial skills to have if you want to run a business. Everything else you can basically find someone else for. Now, the last piece of the puzzle of this second circle is perception. And you can think of perception as the tool to create belief, even in yourself, right? And you want to be able to see the world without emotional reactions, which enables you to view the world in its true form, unaltered by advertising and politics. Then you must make sure that people understand you the way you wish to be understood, so others' perception of you as well as your perception of the world. Even though they all don't need to agree with you, you should still be conscious of how others see you. And then the last thing was in that podcast with Ben Newman. It was an interview actually with PJ. PJ asked him, "Hey, listen, if someone wants to be successful, if someone wants to be motivated, driven, or wants to be an entrepreneur, what are some things that you would like leave them with?" And he's like, "Here's some questions that I would make sure that you're asking yourself every single day. One, what is your purpose? And you want to be clear on that, right? Like, and why are you going to take the actions to pursue those goals?" For him, his purpose, his goal was to make sure that however long in the future that he could go and pick up his kids from school in sweatpants and have the other like teachers or even parents look at him and be like, "Yo, does this guy even have a job?" You know what I mean? That was his goal. And like, he's like, now for a while, I'm 36. And like, I told myself that when I was like early 20s, and I'm 36 now. And that's been a thing for years. I've been able to do that. The second thing is write those goals down, right? You need to be an author of. You need to write those things down, and you might need to change them, but you need to write them down. Third is identify the daily action that you need to take towards working towards those goals. What is the work that allows that vision or dream to become a reality? If you don't know the answer, then find someone like a mentor or something to find out what the work is. Find someone who's been able to accomplish something similar to it. Find out what the work is. Then the last thing is, why not you and why not now? Why wait? You know what I mean? Why aren't you good enough to embark on um sorry, I know I took a little bit of time there, but that's what I had for this week. You guys got any questions? Cool. Otherwise we can hand it off to Naz. Cool. Naz, you want to take it off?
Okay, sure, sweet. So I'm going to be talking about money laundering. It's after watching a video that from a channel I normally watch a lot called Economics Explained. Um, so basically, I'm just going to be talking about ways to legitimize cash after you've obtained it illegally. Um, sorry, the ways you want to money launder is legitimize the cash from ways you received it illegitimately. Get the cash to safe nation away from controlling nations. Avoid taxes, and you want to make the cash available. So the specific definition for money laundering is that money laundering is the legal process of making large amounts of money generated by criminal activity, such as drug trafficking or terrorist funding, appear to have it come from legitimate sources. The money from criminal activity is considered dirty, and the process launders it to make it look clean. So I'm just going to be reading off jot notes that I took from the video. So nowadays, money laundering is not just about legitimizing profits from shady businesses, but it is also to make money more internationally mobile. You want to get your money outside of more controlling nations. One great example of nations like this is China due to its strict laws, but also because it is home to more billionaires than anywhere else in the world due to its economic revolution in the past 10 to 15 years. Um, the problem for these Chinese billionaires is that there's severe limitations on what they can do with their money, and the persistent threat of authoritarian governments, aka disappearing if they don't align with the nation's intentions. Um, Money laundering is a huge problem for the actual nation, though, as money that exits the nation will not be used to invest in future economic progression. You see this in nations like South Africa, where its upper economic class packed up and left the country with all their money with them. The way China avoids this from happening is by placing a limit on how much money its currency can be exchanged for another currency a year. Uh, the specific limit is that no individual can exchange equivalent of $50,000 US for the actual Chinese currency. So you imagine if you had a couple $1 million and the equivalent of US dollars, it takes a lot of time to get that done. So what money launderers do is they run their money through casinos, and fortunately, the biggest casino hub in the world is right next door to China. It's called Macau. It's not actually Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is a very distant second to Macau in terms of um, how much money flows through each location. You can pay a casino travel agent $100 million for an all-inclusive holiday. Um, you get a private jet to the casino, massive suite, and you get $100 million worth of poker chips. You don't have to gamble with all the chips, but you do have to play at least once. Once your gambling vacation is over, the casino will ask you how you want to settle your chips, and you can have them settled in US dollars. This is where you actually convert your currencies. Uh, so you now want to move your money to a developed and secure country, and the best bet is London. Sorry, that wasn't meant to be a pun. The first thing you the first thing you want to do is buy some stable assets like a diversified stock portfolio or some property in London. Then you place something like a mortgage on these assets, which is called equity line of credit. This is basically a loan, and because you have such a high net worth of assets, you get access to a really low interest rate because you're considered low risk in the bank's eyes. For example, Mark Zuckerberg pays 1% rate interest rate for a $7 million home in California because he's considered low risk with all his assets. Um, so your equity line of credit, the bank will typically give you a 50% equity line of credit based off your secure assets. So you're technically 50% richer and paying almost no interest rate for this increase of wealth. Thus, you can go buy whatever you want with this loan. Whereas if you wanted to purchase whatever a yacht or whatever it is with your own money, you would have paid taxes on that. But because you're buying it with the loan, it's pretty much free. That's everything I had.
Wow. So Naz is just doing this research for other people because of his pure curiosity, not because he's looking to money launder. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just every single video that comes up on this channel, like I said, I recommend you guys go look at it. Economics Explained is just super valuable. It's just
Wow.
they're very concise. They do a lot better example or job at explaining it than I do, but they talk about a very interesting topics and they explain it in very good detail. So I watch all their videos and this one I want to talk about. Yeah.
I got no comments on money laundering. I want to criminalize myself.
Yeah, not,
I think it's interesting though. You know what I mean? I do think it's interesting as long as the money's being properly and for good. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
I never really understood how it worked and just the whole world around it. Like, a lot of times you're buying politicians and stuff too in the process of like creating this infrastructure. So a lot of it's very just like interesting. And I think the further you go up the economic ladder, um, whatever all these topics that we talk about, at least related to money, I feel like they all converge, and eventually you have to be in that world. You have to do some of the stuff. I'm not saying money laundering specifically, but you have to be aware of these systems. I'm sure there's more legal ways of trying to avoid paying taxes. Um, but money laundering specifically, it's not like we do any shady business. But in terms of avoiding taxes, I'm sure there's more legit ways of doing it. So
Um, any questions on money laundering, guys?
no, all these guys are pros.
There, like, let me know if you have any questions.
Well,
Um,
one non-criminal way that people used to launder money is sometimes when, oh, exactly what Soroy was saying about caps on moving Sorry, what Naz was saying about moving capital within different countries is long time when you're coming from the Caribbean, you weren't allowed to bring a lot of money. They want to keep the money in the country. So what some people would do is they would make like gold change, gold bangles, and different jewelry. Then they would wear it to Canada, and then when they got to Canada, they would sell the jewelry, and then they would have the money. So it's not necessarily just for like bad people and bad things. Sometimes there are political circumstances that don't allow people to move money around, and that's another possible reason why people do that kind of thing.
Is
cool.
that called money laundering specifically? I guess it
I
is,
don't.
but
I think it's like a weird cat subcategory, but it's not your traditional sense. But
yeah,
it's just it's like another reason why people would have to divert funds and move them around for a more like a non-criminal reason.
yeah, because I'd hate to make it seem like you're exactly right. There's for political reasons or whatever, there's reasons to do that, and I just don't want to call it money laundering because money laundering has like a bad connotation to it. And so I didn't have time to research it either, but like Bitcoin's a great way to money launder, um, and terrorists use it, and that's why Monday the U.S. is going to be coming out with new rules against Bitcoin and a lot of cryptocurrencies. Um, uh, Bitcoin's a great example because you can transfer from different exchanges. Although your government can ask you for the records of the actual like exchange, the transfers, but you can also transfer your Bitcoin to hardware devices, and that's another great way to getting it off like um, paper records. But like I said, I don't have a lot of time to go and look into that, but I think Bitcoin's a great way to move money around too.
I thought they could also trace ledgers.
Well, not institutions or governments specifically. Like Bitcoin works off of that, but like when you make transfers, you can go into your exchanges and see all your transfers. Like that's probably the best way that the government can find out what you're doing. But sorry, would you say that?
Oh, like I thought like you can kind of trace where the coins are to a certain. So, and I don't actually know they can't. That would defy the purpose, right?
Yeah.
Thought
So
there's
the main,
somewhere on the ledger that.
yeah, like the main thing is for cryptocurrencies is you want to be decentralized, meaning that there's not just one spot everything goes through, which the government can use to like see everything, but also it's anonymous. So like um you might have your wallet address, which is just like a bunch of characters, but you can never see who actually owns that wallet or anything like that. Again, you can forfeit your actual personal information of transactions from an exchange website, but uh, I'm sure there's very easy ways to just like end that paper trail. Like I said, with the hardware devices and stuff like that. So, like you guys know, you can put your Bitcoin on USB type
Yeah,
devices,
like
right?
Ledger, right? Like a
They call
USB
them
ledger.
wallets.
Or
Yeah.
there's a treasure and another one. I have to. I can't remember. I'm looking at the. I lost the password.
I would be scared to have those only because I would lose them. Like I don't know where I would put them. The only thing I could think of is like a bank safe. And even then, I don't trust the bank.
Is it? Like no one can like do anything. It need. Ah, fuck. I got. Okay, so what I need to do is one. I need to do two things. I need to get my vision board up ready, and I need to. I need to find. I have to research how to, uh, like retrieve your password for your wallet. So let me. You guys can hold me accountable to get that done by our next call. Okay, those two things.
Sure.
Find out a little bit about fucking how to basically self hack it. But I don't know. I gotta.
But is this an online wallet or
It's
hardware
I have two
wallet?
hardware wallets, like hard USB.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's I don't know.
Cause
Especially now that Bitcoin's at an all time high.
yep.
To close off, anyone got any business ideas? I don't know if I brought this up before, but I was thinking of it like the other day while I was brushing my teeth. Like, man, like all these like videos from the boot camp and like things that we're talking about, they all talk about like what do you want to do, right? Like what do you like. And right now, I gotta be honest with you, like I like playing Dota. I don't, it sounds crazy, I know it sounds like I'm a kid, but I just something about that game that draws me. So I'm like, okay. So one of the things I was listening to yesterday was the guy was like, oh, like how do I drive a Porsche? He's asking, like you're not gonna drive a Porsche working car because you hate they're like workout trainers in coaches or whatever. And so guys like you don't like doing it. I can tell that you don't like it. What do you like doing? He goes, I like bodybuilding myself. He goes, okay, well why don't you just sit down and figure out how to make money doing that or building a business around that? That's just like it took me months. I just kept thinking about it. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm just like I just wait for another idea. What if I could tonight around Dota or a video game or something like that? And like one thing that I've noticed is that like and Naz, you're like the second-ish person that I've kind of introduced to the game to teach them the game and like really be interested in it. But I think that that's been done already, but also like ensuring that the individual is not losing sight of their own personal success and ensuring that they're doing things outside of the game to progress in the game of society. So I was thinking of something like that. If you guys want to continue, please.
I like this idea. Sorry to
Hey,
jump in
Ruben.
like this. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, good. Give me one sec. I just gotta get the door, but please, you guys continue if you guys have any ideas. I'm gonna
Yeah.
rewatch. One sec.
So I think YouTube and Twitch are a great way to incorporate
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, it's a good idea. We should suggest. I'm trying to push Dave
Yeah.
to stream more and to like get a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. But even though a lot of people do YouTube and Twitch, like you can
Mhm.
make it your own by like documenting your journey and making that like maybe a video series or something like that,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
which is unique.
I think he could do that. I think that's what he's looking for to make money off of playing Dota,
Yeah. Yeah, incorporate
right?
monetize it somehow. But yeah, I think YouTube, Twitch are great ways. I'm sure there's others.
I don't know if you guys heard that. Some people were hiring gamers to train them to play Fortnite better.
Oh no way.
Yeah, Dave, are you good enough to train people to
At Fortnite, no. At
at
Dota,
Dota, at Dota,
well,
at
I'm
Dota?
Dota, he is.
and
Yeah,
I'm no,
he
I'm
is.
like 6 months into it, so I'm not like a pro. but I'm
No, he taught me how, and he's still teaching me. But like, I pretty much picked up the game because these guys taught me so well,
yeah, we have like a group of folks that are
especially Dave.
pretty nice at influencing others in the game. Some are more patient than others, but some are more knowledgeable, right? So, um,
So you're thinking of like mentorship through gaming.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like
That's valuable.
I
I
think
think
so.
so.
And just
Parents would be like, "Oh, okay, how am I gonna get my kid to pay attention in school? He's playing so many video games."
huh,
So they hire you to like relate to the kid's game and then coach him into relating that to school, and then eventually get better.
like
That is a service.
like an like a weird tutor. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
like exactly like a weird.
Yeah, you tutor on them on the video game, and then you like
Exactly.
inception them into like good practices.
Yeah,
You inception them into good
like
practices.
and I'm
Perfect.
already like editing papers for people like Naz, like Low Boat. I edited his paper the other like a 90 something. Again, it's because
Great
he was
paper.
proactive and got it to me on time, and I edited it for it. But I thought that was interesting, bro. Thanks for kind of elaborating. Oh, cool. But Ruben, I do
No,
have
no,
a
no.
have an
Definitely.
idea that I wanted to run by you concept. So I talk about that flying thing. It did originate from a Dota, oh, but what else? Hey, Andrew, Soroy, Naz, Ruben, you guys got any ideas? Ruben, if you guys don't know, he's kind of my go-to guy when it comes to like horror movies or movies in general, because he specialized in that. And also he's got a cat, so if you have any questions on how to raise a cat, his little guy pin pretty.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Um, I mean, I mean, I'm interested in technology as well. So listening to Andrew is the reason I logged in. That was awesome, man. I didn't even know what quantum computing was, and I was listening to him and looking up online. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it's got to be in like a soundproof room, and it's a thing that just like it's like a weird
What's
pyramid that floats. I don't know, Andrew. You've got a video, right?
what's
Yeah,
the magic?
it
What's the
looks like a
magic you were?
chandelier.
Oh, like a chandelier. Is that the magic you were talking about, or
The
Dave was mentioning?
the magic is about the superposition, how it can be 0, 1, and both at the same time. And then I guess the other magic is how, because it can do that, it can create wrong answers, and then it has to be you have to program it to eliminate the wrong answer, so it only gives you a right answer. So like all of that is easy to say, but to program it is a different story.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their website.
By superposition, you mean I was reading here that it's like when it's two states at once, right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay.
And then it's two states at once, but then when you ask it for the answer, it just gives you one of its states, but it doesn't, but it's still two states at once. So that's the confusing thing about it.
And that's how they make better calculations. But you have to get rid of the data that doesn't work.
Yeah, I can't fully wrap my mind around it either. It's fucking
Well,
weird.
it's because it's quantum mechanics, isn't it? That's why it's so confusing.
I have no
Yeah.
idea. But all I know is that I'm gonna re-listen to Andy's part blew my mind a little bit, and then look for a video on it. Sounds
Yeah.
cool. Sounds like some
Talking-
alien shit.
Did you? Speaking of cats, it's related to that cat issue, right? The cat in the
experiment.
box.
Yeah, the dead cat.
Wait, what? What's the experiment?
So they did experiment, I think, the early 1900s, where like if you place a cat in a box with I forget what the element was, but the element kills the cat, like plutonium or whatever.
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, Schrodinger's cat. Yeah. If you want to explain it, because I don't know it all.
Hold on. World's
I think it
most
was a
famous.
theoretical experiment, not an actual experiment.
It's
but
a
yeah.
thought experiment. Yeah.
Yeah.
The world's most famous thought experiment. Physicist Erwin Schrödinger described how a cat in a box could be uncertain. The peculiar rules of quantum theory meant that it could be both dead and alive until the box was open and cats. What the hell is that?
So like you don't know if the cat's dead or not. So it's in both states.
What if I put a camera inside?
Well,
Observe
that's
it.
different.
It changes. It's no longer superpositioned. It's no longer two states at once.
So that
Right?
thing that's actual quantum mechanics. So like the Schrodinger cat is also based off or like related to the state of the particle and like quantum mechanics is like it can actually when you're observing it, the nature of that particle changes when you actually observe it. And
But
that's where the slit experiment comes from, where you pass a particle through two slits. Fuck, I don't even
Yeah.
remember this
No,
properly.
that sounds about right. Yeah. I
And
think I remember like that.
and I think it goes through either one slit or the other, depending on if you're observing or not.
hold on.
So
Okay, wait.
because you're actually looking at the particle, its nature changes
This is the
because
magic, Dave.
you're
No.
observing it.
Hold on. No, guys. This is a fucking same thing as if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it. Does it make a sound?
No, no,
No,
no, no.
no.
Objectively, it still makes a sound. So if the cat's dead in the box, it's still dead, regardless of whether I open it up or not. No?
Yeah, but the difference is that the chances of the cat dying is exactly 50%. So you don't know if it's dead until you observe it or open the box, because it could be alive still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or more specifically, it's both dead and alive
Wait,
until you open the box.
how can it be dead and alive? Isn't it dead or alive?
Because that's the whole point about
Wow.
quantum physics, special
So
relativity.
So, like I said, the double slit experiment, I'm just going to explain it here. One of the most famous experiments in physics is the double slit experiment. It demonstrates with unparalleled strangeness that little particles of matter have something of a wave about them, and suggests that the very act of observing a particle has a dramatic effect on its behavior. And they call that the observer effect. Yeah,
Wait,
Whoa.
just because I observe it,
that's right.
it
That's right.
influences the outcome of and the
That's right.
behavior of the particle.
That's right, and
Yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure it's
What?
the same thing for the Schrodinger cat. That's
Okay, so look.
they're both pretty much
I,
the
th- I
same.
think it's because you're observing it with a laser, and because you're prodding it with a laser, it changes.
Okay, look.
That's what it means.
I'm sharing my screen right now with something that you guys are. So it's a variation of the cat in the box theory. Reimagining of Schrodinger's cat breaks quantum mechanics, dumps physics. In a multi-cat experiment, the textbook interprets quantum. I'm sharing my screen on Discord, by
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to lead to contradictory reality physics. Okay, so there's this picture down here. New cats. Physicists have devised a variation of the iconic Schrodinger's cat thought experiment. Of several players who understand quantum theory, but surprisingly, using the standard interpretation of quantum mechanics, the observers sometimes seem to come to different conclusions about a particular event, suggesting that the interpretation contradicts itself in complex. So there's these two cats, Alice and Bob. Alice tosses a coin and, using her knowledge of quantum physics, sends a quantum message to Bob. So Bob, using his knowledge of quantum theory, Bob can detect Alice's message and guess the result of her coin toss. Now there's two observers. When the two observers open their boxes, in some situations they can conclude with certainty how the coin landed, but their conclusions are different. This means that the standard interpretation of quantum theory gives it an inconsistent description of reality. What?
That's why it's quantum mechanics. You're not supposed to understand it.
how,
It's very true.
how are you supposed to create something if you don't understand it, though?
But so this experiment, I'm pretty much sure, is the same thing as like the double slit experiment, which says that a particle will go through both slits at the same time because it's either it can act as a particle or a wave.
Wow.
Channel without a cat video. So without further ado,
Okay.
we present
Okay.
Schrodinger's cat.
Quantum
I'm sure you've heard
entanglement,
some version of this famous
What's that, sorry?
There's quantum entanglement, where I believe, I could be wrong, obviously, but I believe it's like the idea that particles can be like entangled through quantum mechanics, and like if you change one like molecule or atom, it'll affect the other one. And they were like, I think the experiment is
Instantaneously.
like they like transported or they like teleported a atom or a particle by affecting another one or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's the article I shared with Andrew. Yeah, quantum entanglement. When you're sharing data that's been affected by, or they're in the same quantum state, that's what helps with. Someone was talking about Bitcoin before, right? And
Yep.
keeping Bitcoin secure. The reason we can use that is because since they're in the same state, if something changes, someone hacked into your Bitcoin account or something, right? That's how it makes it more secure through quantum computing. I remember reading that.
So just to add on like the quantum entanglement thing that's already talked about. Um you guys remember when I think it was the first thing I talked about on here is how you can look back in time because light isn't instantaneous. It has a speed it travels at. So if I was in a really long dark room and I showed someone and we were both on the ends of the room and I turned my phone on and I showed someone a picture, they wouldn't see the picture on the phone instantaneously. It would take time to travel to them. Um, where quantum entanglement, if you affect one particle, the other particle instantaneously is affected, no matter how far the distance is. So, like when you look into the sky at nighttime, the light that you're looking at a star could be 100 million years old, and so to communicate, it would take 100 million years. Where quantum entanglement is if you affected this particle here, and that particle was 100 million light years away, you would instantaneously be able to communicate.
But
There's
Oh
how can the
there is
shit!
particle be in two places at the same time?
No, it's not the same particles. They're just entangled.
Oh, that's the
They're just
entangle.
entangled.
Almost
Yeah,
like a fucking creating a connection
correct.
between
So
two
like
points.
correct. So realistically, other than opening up a wormhole to that planet that's 100 million light years away, the only way you'd probably be able to communicate is either through a wormhole or through quantum entanglement or some other things we haven't discovered yet. But there's no way through traditional means you could ever talk to a civilization because either one of you are going to be 100 million years dead by the time
Yeah.
the communication gets to the other location.
Holy crap! So now we can, because of this new discovery, we can actually communicate vast distances without
Right.
having to worry about that issue.
Correct. So radio waves that we use, like your radio station, stuff like that, they've been around for like 60 years. So they don't just travel like, you know, from in your neighborhood or your country or whatever. They're currently radiating out into space, but they haven't even left our solar system. It's been 60 years. So aliens that are like listening for us and we're listening to aliens all day long, like it's gonna take like millions of years for those radio waves to get to anywhere that um aliens are actually at, because they're probably listening and we're listening too for radio waves and other stuff. But like I said, we've only been around for a finite time. We've only been doing that stuff for like 60 years. So it's going to take a very long time. That's why quantum entanglement's very, very like intriguing. And like I remember seeing it a couple of years ago where like a Japanese telecom, because I work for Rogers, a Japanese telecom was trying to implement that technology. At least researching it. They're not, sorry, not implementing, but researching it. Because instead of using like fiber optic cables, which is super fast right now, you use quantum entanglement. Same thing, Microsoft wanted to use lasers instead of wires in computers, because uh, with lasers you have the travel time of light, where wires you have the travel time of the electronic signal, so it'd be a lot faster. But that never came to fruition.
This is so crazy.
I love this stuff.
This
Yeah.
is actually. Does Joe Rogan have a podcast on this shit?
He's definitely made one on this
Has
type of
to,
stuff.
right? Like I'd love to
Yes.
Yeah.
hear what they talk. Because the one with the alien dude talking about how he was in a spot in 51 job was first uh the engine of the aircrafts that they identified. That was just crazy. How it like
Yeah.
creates its own gravity.
Yep. And they use a special element 34 to power it. The guy's name is Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar and
Yeah.
what's the other guy's name? Starts with A?
I'm not sure, but I don't know if he was in. Was it the guy that was interviewed with Bob Lazar or
Yeah,
another guy? I'm not sure what his name is. I don't know if he's more of a journalist, isn't he?
yeah, exactly. The one that kind of put
Um,
his Bob
Jeremy Corbell.
Jeremy Corbell. Isn't that crazy that I remember that it started with a
Yeah, that's
name?
amazing.
Like, and even the
Because
other
that
guy,
guy,
like, so Roy got it right on the head, like the nail on the head. I was like, hey Nick, here's a fork, figure it out. Hey Nick, here are the stairs, figure it out. His name was Nick Santonastasso.
yeah,
So
that's insane.
thank you for finding that and confirming. But yeah, like, I remember his name is Nick. I don't. I
I'm
found it.
really bad with names.
Pardon me.
I'm horrible with names. I can.
That's a huge thing though, eh? Like I told myself like I would call a customer and they would tell me their son's name or something and I'd forget and
Makes
I'm
sense.
so awkward. Like I
Hmm.
don't want to be so anytime you meet someone as well, like just remembering their name goes such a long way. Such like a uh overlooked thing. But when you just remember their name, you'd be surprised how subtly they value. They might not say,
Yeah,
"Oh, hey, you're good with." Appreciate it right off the bat, but it definitely goes for them. I found a video on this Schrodinger's cat, like a minute, 7 seconds. Want to watch it real quick?
I'm down.
Hell yeah.
You guys can see it, right?
Yep.
Thought experiment. You put a cat in a bunker with some unstable gunpowder that has a 50% chance of blowing up in the next minute and a 50% chance of doing nothing. The gunpowder is Einstein's version. Schrodinger preferred poisonous gas. But whatever. So until we look in the bunker, we don't know whether the cat is dead or alive. And when we do look, it is either dead or alive. So if we repeat the experiment enough times with enough cats and bunkers and gunpowder, we'll see that half the time, Kitty survives, and half the time, Kitty goes bye-bye. The quantum mechanical interpretation is that before we look, the cat is in a superposition. It's both dead and alive. And our act of looking forces nature's decision. So our curiosity kills the cat. But what about the cat's perspective? Well, the cat either sees the gunpowder explode or not. So inside the bunker, we actually have these two possibilities. The powder explodes and the cat sees it explode, or the powder doesn't explode and the cat doesn't see it explode. There's no option, the powder explodes and the cat doesn't see it explode. So the cat's reality becomes entangled with the outcome of the experiment, and it's our observation of the experiment that forces nature to collapse to one option or the other. But we're like the cat too. Either the cat dies and we see it dead, or the cat lives and we see it alive. So who's observing us to force nature to collapse to one reality? Or do both possibilities happen in parallel within a larger multiverse? This collapsing to one reality problem is one of the biggest unanswered questions in quantum physics. So for Kitty's sake, can I has answer, please?
What the hell? Okay, it still leaves me with questions. But I kind of get it a bit.
Well,
Dave, can I send you a video for the double slit experiment?
Of course, send it over. While you do that, I did scroll through the comments here, and I love you comments.
Yep.
First comment: Schrodinger's cat walks into a bar and doesn't. And then Schrodinger takes a cat to the vet. The vet says, "Mr. Schrodinger, I have good news and bad news." Well, then there's like the toxic comments. What if he puts the cat in a transparent box? And then first reply, "This question is stupid." Love you. And Jan also asked me to ask you about his investment in Bitcoin currency.
What investment?
Is that the joke?
Oh,
I don't know. He asked that
I
a
don't
little
know.
while ago.
I'll ask him.
Okay, let's check this out now. Double slit experiment through the worm. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
yeah.
Quantum theory works, even though it shouldn't. And perhaps the ultimate proof of just how unsettling quantum mechanics can be is something called the double slit experiment. It will make you question whether reality exists at all. This simple configuration shoots particles of light called photons, one at a time, through two tiny slits in a screen. with a laser which produces light. This light is attenuated such that only one photon at a time emerges. This photon passes through a two-slit assembly, and then we have a camera which registers the pattern behind the two-slit assembly. So what we see is that the photons arrive one by one on the screen, some here, some there, and it looks pretty random. Since the photons travel one by one, some through this slit, some through that slit, you would expect them to leave a pattern of two stripes on the wall. And you would be wrong. They mysteriously create a band of stripes. This is what you would expect to see if a constant beam of light shined through the two slits. It would spread across the wall like a wave. So how can single bullet-like particles of light create a wave pattern? This could only happen if the particles go through both slits at the same time. In other words, the particle is in two places at once. But strangest of all is what happens when you put detectors next to the slits. When the photons are being watched, the wave pattern disappears. Take away the detectors, and the wave pattern comes back. This suggests that we can change the way reality behaves just by looking at it. Does this mean that reality itself is not real? The modern answer is that the path taken by the photon is not an element of reality. We are not allowed to talk about the photon passing through this or this slit. Neither are we allowed to say that the photons pass through both slits. All this kind of language is not applicable.
What
Hey,
the
you!
hell did I just watch?
Me! Yeah, you!
Yeah, it gets crazy, man. And that double slit experiment is not something like, um, it's pretty famous.
Speaking of that of movies, and I don't know if you guys saw Arrival and
Yeah.
how that lady like learned the language and then started thinking of time differently, time and space differently. Could be the same, right?
Well, even with us, with like our languages, like there's people that like study and stuff, and they explain how like different languages have like different impacts on the brain and how they perceive and like think,
Yes,
depending
yes,
on your
exactly.
primary language.
That's what I was talking about. Yes. So
Wow.
we need to stop talking about it. To things happening and not happening, they both happen, kind of thing.
This is crazy. So because they look at it, the wave pattern disappears, but when they don't look at it, it continues.
Yeah, so
How
that's
is
what
that
the
possible?
whole idea behind Schrodinger's cat and like the double slit experiment is the observer effect. Because you're observing it, the nature of whatever you're looking at changes. And I'm not talking about like people or like conscious things. I'm talking about like static, like fucking
Like the
non-conscious.
wavelength becomes a particle when observed through the detectors, and those detectors are usually lasers.
But like they change their behavior based on knowing that, like
Technically,
during the process.
they're not they're not conscious, but yes.
How is the like what? Yeah, yeah. Oh.
And he also says that the path of the particle is like it's not like he basically he's saying we can't comprehend the path of the particle. Like that could play into like fourth dimension stuff and things like that too.
But like, what is and again, don't have an answer. Just a question is what is dictating or what is creating that awareness that we are monitoring it live and preventing it from being true,
See, the
right?
way I would describe it is nothing's being created. It's a lack of our understanding
Yes.
of what's that process. And like I said, it could be something that's going on with like the fourth dimension or something else like that. That specific part where the particle's traveling, the path of it.
Definitely.
Like, hey, you're not allowed to know about this. Oh, I see you look like I'll give you the end result, the answer, but I'm not gonna let you understand how we because when you try doing that, it's not good.
Well, mind you, the end result will change too because of the observer effect. Like you
Think of it
mentioned
like
there.
if he's thinking about it like fourth dimension. I think the best explanation would be the Interstellar movie when
Mhm.
Matthew McConaughey's looking at through the books at his past, and he pushes, and like a book falls, and supposedly he also sends a signal, and the signal to the girl says, "Don't leave,"
Mhm.
and the girl's telling him to leave, but he doesn't. He thinks she's crazy, that it's not real,
Mhm.
so he leaves. It continues, right? He affects his own future by
Yeah.
looking at it.
But then doesn't at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, so just stop
I think we all watched it.
listening. At the end of the movie, she ends up finding the solution to the equation as a result of him leaving. No?
Yeah, exactly. That also happens.
Oh, but
So
then
that whole scene was about the past, the future, and the present all exist at the same time.
correct
Hmm.
because
No, sorry, don't exist at the same time, but they're all like one thing.
they're linked. And what was it? It was gravity that allowed him to communicate to
Suppose
the past, right?
it was some formula for gravity.
Yeah. But I thought gravity is a function of space and time.
It is.
What he was saying was that it was love
Oh,
because it was
that's
the connection. It was the
that.
connection between him and his daughter that transcended space and time.
Which could be quantum entanglement.
Exactly.
Like literally, yeah.
What if I love quantum entanglement? Will it let me stand and observe it? I was like,
It
Because
gets
it's
crazy,
function.
man.
Yeah.
Who knows? You add those two things, who knows what happens.
Man.
wow. Well, very cool, man. Wow.
Speaking of space and time, if you let me conclude
Yeah.
with something, Saturn and Jupiter aligned. They're joined right now. If you go out tonight, if you go out tomorrow, you'll see that they're close together.
Mhm.
This happens only every 20 years. Uh, Interestingly, uh, Saturn represents time in ancient Roman calendars, and Jupiter represents Father and or God. We could consider space and time come together in this time. Uh, I don't know if I thought it would be interesting to mention that with coronavirus and everything that's happening, this conjunction, as what it's called, uh, in the past they also kind of related it to dark omens. The Muslims or in Islam, they related it to apocalyptic moments, or also moments of uh, prophets or messiahs arriving. Which with coronavirus, I think it's like, wow, what a crazy coincidence.
So this specific day is related to what they're saying?
This specific day is related to,
Armageddon?
it's not related, but you can talk about it like that. Some people will think like that. They will think, oh shit, 2020, it's known as Saturnalia, or also the conjunction. It's different this year because COVID happened.
Right, yeah.
Yo, do you guys know if you vacuum seal a room where there's no air, a bowling
Yes.
ball and a feather drop?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I still don't understand how they have the same like
because it's not about weight.
yeah,
Days.
well why isn't it about weight? Because gravity still affects it.
Because gravity will have the same pull on whether it's a feather or a bowling ball.
Right, yeah, that was the thing. It doesn't matter how heavy it is, but
What the
The weight's only for
hell?
wind.
Yeah, it's only the resistance of the air that
yeah.
causes to fall slower.
Questioning everything. Wow, they actually hit at the same time. That's crazy.
Yeah, the problem is the difference between weight and mass. Because mass does affect gravity, like with the planets and stuff, but
Wow. Fucking blow my.
Dave, we can blow your mind, man. There's next level stuff too, man. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to take up too much of your guys' times. But like,
No, I think it's really cool. Like, if you guys want to talk about, wow.
I'll just give a quick like description of it without
Go
getting
ahead,
into
man.
it. But
Yeah,
like,
do it.
especially because they talk about this in like the Joe Rogan podcast and stuff like that, where like trying to, like string theory. Have you guys heard of
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
No, I have
yeah.
no idea what that.
I
To be honest, I
recommend.
hardly know what it is too, but it's basically like um the purpose they haven't figured it out yet, but the purpose of it is all the way the universe works is you can write down the formulas of how the way the universe works on a piece of napkin. There's like 4 or 5 different equations. Um and the the purpose of string theory is to unify all of those formulas into one theory and I guess formula too. Um and going down that direction, there's different ways of how they think the universe came to be. One of them is that the universe is very complex and like huge and all this stuff. It all came from like simple instructions, like very basic instructions where I mean like 2 points connected um create the universe. Like I literally mean like a dot and a dot connected. If you can like not multiply is the wrong word to use, but like if you can make that connection as complex as possible, you create the universe. And so people have tried to simulate this in computers um, by creating a program with very very simple instructions. So you have a grid of squares, and uh, one of like the rules is if your neighbors the squares will be black, and if your neighbor's squares are white, your center square continues to basically exist. If it is not, it turns black. And just based off these simple, those are the only rules. There's no other rules. Based off those rules, you get complex, you get complexity from the program. And if you guys want to see a video, it shows not they seem like living creatures in that program based off very simple instructions. I'm doing a very bad example of explaining it, but I'm saying that
Like mathematics, like flowing.
yeah, yeah. Um, but basically the you might think the universe is insanely complex, but what theorists, physical physicists say is that uh, it all comes down from extremely simple instructions. Like when I say instructions, I mean like kilobyte size instructions. Like like Word documents take up like 10 kilobytes. I mean like 1 kilobyte instructions, where that you have them interact with each other so much that it creates this complexity. And so, like I said, through like simple instructions that you put into this program, the program's called the Game of Life. If you want to YouTube it, it's simply we can. You don't have to go over it
Mm,
today because it's a lot of stuff, but
mhm.
like it's amazing like from simple instructions how complex something can get, and they show that through the program. It's not anything crazy program, it's just a simple instruction, but because those simple instructions interact with each other continuously, like the universe over billion, like whatever it is, like quadrillions of years, you get immense complexity, which is like life, quantum mechanics, and all this stuff. And like the visual stuff you see in the program literally looks like life based off simple instructions that you can understand. Very simple instructions. I literally mean that if you have a box of like 9 boxes, your center box is what's going to change. If the boxes on the outside are a specific color, then that center box is either going to be black or white. Okay, cool. Now that center block box is black or white, it now affects a different box. And now that box is going to change its state, and now that's going to change another box. And that simple cascade of like uh transition creates like literally life in that program, what looks like to be life. And like
So
yeah, if you guys want to see that video, it's just called The Game of Life, and
yeah,
they'll explain.
Introduction to Conway's The Game of Life, right?
Correct, yep.
There's another one called What is String Theory? 2 minutes. Under three.
Yeah, yeah, but that's a completely different thing from The
That's
Game of
different.
Life. Yeah,
I
those
don't
are
even.
just
I,
series.
I
This
gotta
is
be
John
honest, man. I
Conway's
lost you.
Game of
You're talking about
Life.
the squares.
The
People
Game of
stuff.
Life
What is
Yeah,
this?
so
consists
so
of
the easy, because I'm
some
just really bad at
squares and
explaining. The
No, it's
easiest
not
way
you. It's me. Like, trust me.
No, 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 no. I explained it horribly. I explained it horribly. But the best way to do it is just like literally watch that video, only
they are the
because it's a
points
visual
of space
representation
sometimes
of
referred to
how
as
the squares change. And literally, I'm talking about like when you play cards and you turn them face up or face down, it's like that's the interaction. That's it. That's the only thing that's changing. And because you're flipping a switch and other switches are related to that switch, it's literally a 1 or 0. That's it, all it is. But because everything's related, um, you can get immense complexity, which to us looks like life and stuff like that. But yeah, whenever you guys get time, or we can talk about it next time, we can watch that video which explains it. It's very easy to understand how the actual thing works, but your mind will be blown by what the results are.
If you could mention it again, because I was looking for it.
Yeah, so it's called the Conway's Game of Life.
Game of Life. Thanks, man.
No worries,
Appreciate it.
bro.
That sounds interesting.
And you'll see like videos called the Epic Conway Game of Life, but I suggest you don't watch that at all because you're not going to appreciate how complex it is before you understand how the programming works.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cells, and a point can be either on or off.
But if you guys are watching right
Black
now, you
is
might as well
on,
throw it on.
white
I'm
is
watching
off.
it right now. Yeah.
And you can also call it alive or
Roy
dead.
Somebody watching it.
Now, there's a simple rule that tells us whether or not cells stay alive or they die, and that's this: if a cell has if it has no neighbors that are alive, it dies. If it has just one neighbor that's alive, it'll die. So both of these will die. But if it has two neighbors that are alive, it'll stay alive. So look what happens to this cell. It's going to stay alive on the next moment of time. Of course, something else weird happened there, right? These two died, and these two became alive.
I'm watching it
they
right
were
now.
born. Let's look at that again.
I'm on Discord too.
Oh, you're streaming?
This cell only has one live
Hey, you
neighbor.
want me to start
It's going to
over?
die. Same here. It's going to die.
I'm okay.
So on
I've
the
already
next
watched it. It's up to you
generation,
guys.
that one will die and that one will die. But there's a rule for birth, and the rule for birth is this: if a cell
When are
has
you watching?
exactly 3 live
It's called An Introduction to Conway's The Game of Life. It's
Yeah, that's the-
You've seen that, Troy?
No, I'm watching it now.
neighbors, it will be
I mean, if you want to put
born.
it on the stream, I will watch it there too.
This cell has exactly 3 live neighbors, and so does that one. So these two will die, and that will be born. And you can see what's going to happen now. By symmetry, it's just going to go back to a horizontal bar, and we have now just an oscillator. We're continuing here with Conway's Game of Life, and let's look at this pattern. We've got a square, we've got a square, we've got a square. Those are all on. These points or cells are on or alive. They're energized. So, this cell has 2 live neighbors. It's going to stay alive. This cell has 2 live neighbors. It'll stay alive. This cell, the same 2 live neighbors. It'll stay alive. And let's look at this one. That one has 3 live neighbors, so it's going to be born. And that's what happens. It's born. Now, this is a stable pattern, right? Each of these cells has 3 live neighbors. It's alive, and so it's going to stay alive. The surrounding cells don't have enough energy. They don't have enough life around them to be born. So this is just going to be a stable pattern. I'm actually stepping through time, but nothing happens. So that's an interesting pattern. Let's look at this pattern now. Hard to say what this one's going to do, but look what's going to happen. We need to use computers to figure this out. If we had to calculate this by hand, that would be a little rough. It's going to change. Now you can see it looks like it's rotated itself right horizontally or vertically. And the same again, you see a reappearance of a pattern. And look at that. That's just back to where it was, except it's back to the same pattern that it was, except it's shifted one to the right and one down.
Whoa.
That's a glider. It glides.
It just glided down
moves.
the graphic.
Let's look at the glider in a little bit more detail here. There it is. There's a glider that's ready to glide. So here, let's go.
So
let's step it through time a little bit.
Like,
there's the next moment of time, the next
I have 2 more
moment
minutes.
of time, the next moment of time, the next moment of time.
And it just keeps
You
doing
can
that
see
until it's
moved,
stable. That's
kind of
crazy.
walked. But what are we talking about when we say it? What is the
Chef, we'll catch you
glider?
later, bro.
I
Thanks
mean,
for
the
coming by.
cells aren't
Appreciate it.
moving. The
Jeez, now I gotta
points
get you
in
back twice.
space don't move.
We'll
The
get you
points
back.
in
Thank you.
space remain the same. They remain in their same
You too, bro.
relations with each other. They don't move around.
We're gonna play Maple
All
Long now.
that's moved is the pattern of qualities, right? The pattern of colors, black and white. And if you think of those as energy, then you've got a moving energy pattern. The glider is a kind of particle, but it's an
Yes, I do.
energetic particle. It's
Get you
like
back.
a
You stream
vortex
tonight. Come
moving
by.
through space. It's a pattern of energy that moves through space. And because of its regularity, because of its invariance, because of the way its shapes repeat every fourth cycle, it seems to have its own independent existence. Now, some might say that the glider is a thing which emerges from space. Others might just say that the glider is a thing which supervenes on space. Perhaps it's a whole composed of properties or qualities, or perhaps it's some sort of system or pattern of energy, to use that terminology again. Let's watch it just to see that it's the pattern of energy that's moving. Cells aren't moving. There seems to be a distinctive layer of reality, a second layer of reality on top of space. And here it is.
Cool.
So
That's the
the
glider
next
moving
second
through
video, when you guys
space.
have time, I'd probably ask you guys to watch is like you watch like the epic game of life Conaway or like different videos of like the simulations, and like they get pretty crazy where they create numbers, they create like all these objects that you're aware of, like, and different interactions, some count and stuff like that. And it's not that you're programming it to do that. You literally put in the most basic instructions, and this level of complexity came out. Like obviously, if you go run write a computer program to go do whatever, you're literally telling it what to do.
Hmm.
But this, you're putting in very simple fundamental instructions, which is like the blocks change and that's it. And like a level of complexity like that it's not even related to the instruction set emerges. And
So
that's what they think the universe is too. Before even space existed, like what is nothing? Like space isn't nothing. Um, before space existed, before maybe even dimensions existed, like what existed? And so they think that the progression from like absolutely nothing to like something, it has to be a very fundamental, like small like instruction set that like over like gazillion years like interacts with each other and creates some sort of complexity, which is not even right now, just like maybe before the Big Bang, and just continues.
Like a God program mode or something like that. Someone invented the best form of code and created our pocket universe.
But when you say best form of code, like I think like just someone that writes a very intuitive, very like some sort of code. I don't even want to call this code because it's like a
Right,
one.
right.
It's extremely fundamental. It's like it has to be extremely small, extremely like you can't say it for it to
Because
like
we're talking
go.
about laws of physics,
Yeah,
technically, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't tell it to go create humans and go create like the sun and stuff like that. I'm talking about I'm talking about like ants. Like ants do very specific stuff and they create like a lot of complexity. That's another thing we talked about on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, but like I said, what I'm trying to say is like you're not programming the actual thing. It's because the way these things interact, it creates all this complexity. All this, the humans, the suns, the planets, all is arbitrary. Like in another form of this universe, none of it can exist, but the same level of fundamental code can exist. It's all arbitrary. And like I said, the code is very, very simple. That's the point. It's not supposed to be complex at all. Just like it is in this
Right.
computer program. The way the squares change color based on the other squares, because they're interrelated like that, if you have enough squares and you have enough time, it creates a lot of complexity. Like I said, they create numbers, they count. You have like they call them flyers that shoot across the screen, and like different. They create systems that interact with each other, all based off simple instructions.
wow. We should
So
have
like,
like a separate talk just about because I think
yeah,
there's a lot to talk
yeah.
about. Holy, like where did this came out of nowhere, but I love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, like Ruben, even if you want to just like hop on next week and like spark a conversation like this, I think that just based on what I'm seeing from the viewers and stuff like that, I think they just like natural conversations. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. So like the
You guys,
viewership is like tripled. Uh,
very insightful stuff. You know, you guys think deeply about things. I like it.
cool. So I mean, anything else before we break?
I think we got it all out there.
Yeah, right. I don't think we even scratched the surface, but I'll take it. Cool. I appreciate you guys for hanging out. Ruben, thank you for, hopping in, even just listening and whatnot and just contributing. And then Naz, thank you for, again, choice, action, outcome, right? You're fuck.
Exactly.
I didn't get ready for this in time, but like, okay,
Yeah.
can I get something in time? So you did. And Naz and Naz, sorry, Curry and Soroy, thank you guys for always coming to bat, being consistent, that stuff. Shedding light on the important stuff that you
Definitely, definitely. Happy week, happy holidays, guys.
Oh
Happy setting
yeah.
up.
Happy holidays, everyone. I'm still down to do it next Sunday if you guys are.
Word.
I'll be ready.
Cool.
Same.
All right, folks. I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
All right. Have a good one,
Thank you,
guys.
Dave. Bye.
Bye bye.
Anytime. Thank you. All right, guys. Let's go raid Vazzy. He's doing a 2,000 follower tournament. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go say what's up to him. Okay. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. He's got a shitload. It's one of the biggest Instagram tourneys I've seen so far. And Vazzy's a good guy, so let's go raid him right now. All right. Cool. I'll be on later though. Let's say what's up to Vaz.
I don't know if